Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening.
Retorted, "Why would you want me to head in? What about you?" Sophia gave a smile. "I don't have to since I won't be married before age 30. Anyway." He didn't enter the community center to mingle around because he never intended to settle down either. At this moment, there was a sudden downpour that trapped the both of them inside the church on the hilltop. The security guards had already knocked off work at this stage and forgot that Arthur and Sophia were still inside before they proceeded to lock the doors. It was raining cats and dogs and did not look like it would stop for a long time. When she looked at the time, she couldn't resist informing him, "I think their staff has knocked off work and would lock us here if we don't leave soon." "It's raining cats and dogs, so how are we going to leave?" Arthur felt at ease as he asked. "I think it won't stop until night time." She cupped her face while she answered. Not long after that, she felt that the raindrops were beautiful and reached out to play in the rain. The sky gradually darkened over in the distance, which meant that nightfall was about to arrive. The mountain behind the church had also started to become deserted. "Otherwise, let's try to make our way down," Sophia said to Arthur. "If we're drenched, so be it." He nodded in agreement, after which they walked into the rain. As they were heading down the steps, he reached out with his hand and explained, "I'll hold you." "You don't have to," she waved her hand in rejection. "I'm worried that you'll fall down," a concerned Arthur explained. This woman had been repeatedly too reckless for her safety, so he could predict the kind of dangers that would befall her in advance. A helpless Sophia then took his hand before they held hands in the rain and created the impression that they were romantic lovers. When they finally arrived at the bottom of the steps, she looked left and right as she yelled without receiving any response. She cursed as she slapped her own mouth. "I really have a crow's mouth because what I said turned out to be true. They have indeed knocked off work." Hearing this, Arthur, who was next to her, puffed in amusement because she was scolding herself. "You are still laughing? See, we are stuck here," she growled as she blinked. He surveyed his surroundings and noticed a wall measuring about 2 meters in height next to him before pointing at it. "We'll get out here." Sophia panicked when she heard his words and looked around. "How can you climb up the wall without a ladder?" Just as she threw her question at him, she saw him approaching the wall and raising his arms to hold the top of the wall. Then, he easily climbed up before stretching out with his hand while saying, "Come, I'll pull you up." A surprised Sophia did as instructed, after which he yanked her up with his full strength. "Stay here and don't move," Arthur warned before he jumped to the ground and reached out to break her fall. "We'll jump down together since I'll be catching you." "I can't because I'll end up injuring you." "Stand aside, I'll jump down on my own." She was petrified when she saw the distance of about 2 meters. "Jump." He did not mind breaking her fall by carrying her. As she nervously moved on the wall in preparation to make the jump, she suddenly screamed, "Aw!" Was she behaving like she was an ant in hot water? She should be making the jump with Arthur's safe hands around her. Fortunately for Sophia, he had already anticipated her reaction, and when they made the fall, he tightly hugged her. As she was in shock, she grabbed onto his neck and buried her small face in his collarbone. They were drenched as a result of being in the rain, and now that they were in a tight embrace, it was exceptionally easy for them to create misunderstandings. "How did you manage to grow up without injuring yourself?" an irritated Arthur asked her. Sophia felt aggrieved because she had a peaceful upbringing that was devoid of mishaps and injuries. Yet, after running into Arthur, she seemed to be landing herself in all kinds of troubles. As she sat in the SUV, she noticed that the sky was completely dark by now. He switched on the heater in the car, but he was nowhere in a better shape than her. His hair was glued to his forehead, and under the headlights, It was evident that his soaked shirt was so glued to him that it restricted the movement of his muscles. Yet, in such an embarrassing situation, the moment he pushed his hair to the back, it revealed a different kind of attraction, one that was full of humility. As Arthur and Sophia had just climbed off the wall, their clothes were stained with dirt. "Let's find a hotel nearby and take a shower there." He turned his head to Sophia and suggested. It would take about another hour to get back to the villa, but he could not endure the journey any longer without first refreshing himself. Without any objection, they arrived at a 5-star hotel 20 minutes later. However, he could not get the suite like he expected to, as they were all reserved by foreign visitors who came for the newly large enterprise nearby. Therefore, there were only double rooms available for the time being. Sophia was not picky about their limited choice, but she was worried that Arthur would not be happy with the outcome. "Give me a double room then." Having no other choices, Arthur could only compromise. While checking them in and distributing the key card, the receptionist stole a glance at him. Even though he was soaking wet, the receptionist still found him fairly handsome despite his state. After checking in, they entered the elevator. As she saw her reflection in the mirror, Sophia crossed her arms around her chest immediately. Oh, God! She was surprised to see her white t-shirt drenched against her body, which revealed her curves to everyone. After entering the room, she could see that the double room only came with a bathroom. Therefore, she suggested, "Mr. Weiss, you may go first. I might take a long time to wash my hair." Arthur was not bothered by the fact that he needed to wait, and instead, he offered with courtesy. "Ladies first." Touched by his generosity, Sophia kindly accepted his suggestion. "All right, I will make it fast then." After that, she walked into the bathroom and took a shower to clean herself thoroughly from head to toe. Reality hit and stunned her as soon as she finished showering. She slowly remembered that there were only towels prepared in the bathroom. If she needed a bathrobe, she would need to get it from the cabinet outside the bathroom. Having no other options, she wrapped the towel around her body and began to dry her hair. Her silky hair cast down her back as she attended to them. Besides, she had an average height of 5 feet 5 and fair skin which could reflect light. Such a combination gave her a perfect appearance. Before she walked out of the bathroom, she took a deep breath and hoped that Arthur had left the room to not see her current state. Once she pushed the door open, the first thing she saw was Arthur waiting on the couch with his bare chest. He was wearing only his pants right now, and his hip bone was shown as he lounged casually on the couch. I have finished. It's your turn to shower." Pulling the towel close to her body, she walked out of the bathroom and informed him in a meek tone. When Arthur heard Sophia's words, he raised his head and took the view in. A glint flashed across his eyes at the sight in front of him. He had been living smoothly without any obstacles or hindrances, so this was the first time he felt charmed as the woman stood before him. There was no calmness and clarity in his eyes like usual. Instead, his eyes were bright as if they could scorch into her soul. As he rose to his feet, Arthur's height enveloped her like a net. Sophia looked up immediately to prevent him from making any sudden moves. Just as she thought he was going to do something when he walked toward her shirtless, his comment rang in the room. "Not bad, you have nice curves." After being caught off guard by him, she was speechless and could not make a snarky comeback against his remark. However, needless for him to say, she was always aware of her fit body and had confidence about it. Before she could remind him to take the bathrobe with him, Arthur had already entered the bathroom and shut the door. Letting out a frustrated sigh, she half expected to see him with a towel around his waist later, even though that was not in her plan. She took the bathrobe from the cabinet and changed into the attire. It was a brand new experience for her to only wear a bathrobe. 20 minutes later, Arthur pulled open the bathroom door to reveal himself. Water was still dripping from his hair and he was in his towel as Sophia had expected. From what she could see, he had fair skin, but it did not mean that his body was not kept in shape. He had a toned body with visible muscles, which was proof that he spent a lot of time on maintaining it. "Mr. Weiss, are we heading home later?" She waited for him to settle before she asked. "I already asked my bodyguard to send us some clothes. He is on his way." Using the towel she left on the bed to dry his hair, Arthur answered her. As the space was limited in the room, they were looking at each other at close range. Suddenly, a malicious thought occurred to him as he observed her. She is probably only wearing a bathrobe, isn't she? At the same time, Sophia was wondering about the same thing. Arthur was probably wearing nothing underneath the bath towel. Having that thought in mind, she reminded him, the robe is in the cabinet. Walking toward the cabinet, he took out a bathrobe and wore it. Right after that, he yanked the towel from his waist. As her eyes were glued on him from the beginning, her breath came to a sudden stop as he undressed before her. Did he forget I'm here too? Since he was changing into the robe in front of her, it left Sophia to her own imagination. Fixing the sash on his robe, Arthur brushed his hair aside as he turned to look at her. As soon as their eyes met, there was an indescribable tension brewing between them. "Have you had a boyfriend before?" Feeling bored as he was waiting for clean clothes, Arthur popped a question at her. Sophia was already 23 years old, but somehow she felt like a loser if she answered honestly, so she lied instead. "Of course." As she answered his question, she pretended to be calm. "How many boyfriends did you have?" he asked intensively. "Just one." "How far did you make it?" "Pardon?" "Holding hands, embracing, kissing, or sleeping with each other." "At which stage were you guys at?" Arthur's eyes stared intensely into hers and his voice sounded like he was interrogating her. Taken aback by the explicitness in his question, Sophia stuttered, "See, can I not answer this question? We can exchange our secrets. You can ask me the same question later." His eyes did not waver as if they were locked onto hers. Her eyes blinked a few times at the suggestion and considered it. In her opinion, it would not be a bad bargain, though. All we did was hold hands. Sophia decided to give in to the temptation with a lie. She was aware that the most intimate thing she had ever done with a man was sharing a kiss, and that happened to be with Arthur. To get the snowball rolling, she would now need to tell more lies to cover up for the first. He raised his eyebrow with a hint of satisfaction when he heard her answers. "Really?" "Yeah, I won't lie." She kept a straight face even though she was certainly not telling the truth. Remembering her promised right, she tested the waters. "Can I ask you the same question now?" "Sure." Sitting down at the bedside, Arthur leaned backward with his elbows on the bed. He then lifted his chin and fixed his gaze on her. "How many girlfriends have you had before?" "None at all," he answered honestly. However, Sophia did not find it credible and spoke her mind. "I don't believe any of your words. You must have had many girlfriends before. Isn't Miss Jennings one of them?" "I never lie." His eyes lit up like a torch as unquestionable authority lay underneath them. She choked on his words with thoughts running through her mind. If he thinks he can fool me, then how far did you ever go with a woman? Learning what she wanted to know, she decided to change the topic. Arthur might never have had any serious relationship, but could he say the same about those women whom he had been sleeping with? "We kissed." His answer was a surprise to Sophia. As she was dubious with him, she shot him another question. "With who?" "You." Her mind froze as she heard him answer without hesitation. With a shocked expression, she stared at him while having a hard time believing his words. She could feel the burning sensation on her cheeks as well. Up until now, he had been only kissing one woman, which was her. Stop lying. I have a hard time believing it because you were so good at kissing last time. Sophia intended to lift the mood by teasing him. There are a few things that come naturally to man, and one of them is kissing. However, Arthur was serious with an explanation. A smug smile slowly formed on his face as he explained, "Are you trying to imply I have good kissing skills?" Warmness crept onto her face as she shook her head hard. "I'm not. I am not going to stroke his ego." He squinted at her denial with displeasure. Is she trying to say I lack skill? He wondered. Suddenly, he rose from the bed with determination and walked toward her. Why don't you tell me how I am doing at kissing exactly? I want to know your opinion. When she saw him closing their distance, her whole body tensed as she wondered about the reason why he was so bothered by her opinions. How can I give out opinions regarding this matter? He is only trying to take advantage of me. Before she could finish her words, Arthur had already closed the distance between them. With his face staying dangerously close to her, his hands cupped her face. Why don't you try it again and tell me how you think? Right at that moment, he pressed his lips onto hers and began to kiss her. At first, Sophia was so mad at him, thinking that he was only looking for excuses to kiss her. But soon enough, the woody scent of cedar filled her mind and it became all she could think of. Sophia's arms wrapped around his neck reflexively. The thought of Arthur had been on her mind lately and she found herself attracted to him. She wondered when she had fallen for him. Was it that time when he risked himself to save her at the beach, or the moment he tried to rescue her but ended up rolling down the hill with her, or when he settled her father's debt? For her whole life, never had someone sacrificed himself for her like he did aside from her family. As time passed, the kiss between them became more intense. She could not help but panic as everything was going out of her control. Right now, he was giving off a dangerous vibe as though he could devour her with the kiss. Sensing that Sophia's body was tensing under his touch, Arthur let go of her promptly. Emotions were surging in his eyes and his face showed a trace of him restraining himself. Moreover, he felt like his body was burning in a fire and the fire was slowly making its way up to his brain, eating away all his reasons. The more he tried his moves on her, the more he was confused by the results. At the same time, even if he wanted to trigger a reaction out of her to explore her effect on him, he still did not want to scare her away by making one wrong move. As the stalemate grew heavier between them, someone rang the bell. Assuming it was his bodyguard outside with the clean clothes, he turned to open the door. As he expected, standing out there was one of his bodyguards, but Emily stepped into the room with a click of the high heels before the bodyguard could. As soon as she took in the scene in the bedroom where the occupants were wearing only bathrobes, she turned to Sophia with gritted teeth and Emily's body shook uncontrollably as she turned green with envy. How dare Sophia bring Arthur to mess around in a hotel room? Emily? Why were you here? Even though Arthur directed the question to her, his eyes were shooting daggers toward the bodyguard. The man's stomach churned at the sight. In no position to reject Emily's demand, the bodyguard let her follow along without a second choice. When Sophia's eyes met Emily's gaze, she noted instantly that Emily had misunderstood the situation and was now mad at her. Even more, it was a huge misunderstanding. Wait outside, we're changing. With a deep voice, Arthur instructed Emily. Emily was full of resentment as she eyed Sophia one last time before exiting. At last, Sophia swapped her attire with clean clothes. They even brought me the underclothes, she thought. It must be Emily's servant who prepared for me. After changing, they made their way back to the villa. In the car, Sophia took the passenger seat while Emily and Arthur sat at the back seats. As they did not bother to make any conversation along the trip, there was a heavy silence hanging in the air. Suddenly, the car came to a hard stop and Emily seized the opportunity to fall into Arthur's arms. Just as Sophia turned to check on them, Emily's upper body was already leaning feebly into Arthur's chest. "Sit tight." Arthur helped her into a sitting position. "But I'm feeling dizzy." "Artie, let me lean on you, please." Emily refused to wait for his reply and clung to him with great force. Fixing her gaze on the road, Sophia tried her best not to check on the commotion at the back seats. It was an obvious fact that Emily liked Arthur. Other than that, they came from a similar family background, which added to the possibility of Emily becoming Arthur's future wife. Sophia was aware that she should keep her hopes down, but when she heard Emily playing coquetry on him, her heart felt tangled. At this very moment, she began to feel her mind turning cloudy. She wondered whether she was suffering from car sickness, or if it was because she was drenched in the rain this afternoon. Sensing the warmness enveloping her cheeks, she placed a hand on her face. Feeling the burning sensation under her touch, she finally realized that she was running a temperature. "Sir, please let me off here." Sophia turned to the side and asked the bodyguard in the driver's seat. The bodyguard stopped the car at the roadside according to her words. Before she left the car, she turned to the back and told Arthur, "Mr. Weiss, I can't accompany you back to the villa. I have some matters to attend to tonight." Finishing her sentence, Sophia pushed the door open and alighted from the car. Seeing that Emily made no remark about her departure while Arthur was silent, the bodyguard continued to drive on. He made it about 100 meters before Arthur directed an order at him. "Reverse now." The bodyguard was confused only for a second before he reversed the car just as the man had ordered. Meanwhile, after alighting from the car, Sophia was feeling worse than before. As she stood under the streetlights, she waved helplessly at the passing cars, in the hopes of someone stopping to send her to the hospital. However, her effort was fruitless as she was standing in the middle of the roadside, which was not suitable for a cab to stop. At this moment, a black SUV rolled to a stop about 10 meters away from her. The beaming light enveloped the person who alighted from the car. Arthur, who was wearing a dress shirt with embroidery, caught her in his sight and noticed her discomfort immediately. He strode to where she stood. Feelings of queasiness were coursing through her bloodstream. As she saw a silhouette nearing toward her, she waringly let out a deep breath and raised her gaze at that person. The sight made her pupils dilate. Didn't he leave by car? Why did he come back to find her? "What's wrong?" Arthur asked in a low voice. At the same time, he saw her face flushing red, so he realized something and placed his big palm on her forehead. The burning sensation took him aback. After wrapping her in his arms, he cursed, "Are you an idiot?" Sophia was scolded, but why did she feel loved? "I didn't want to trouble you guys." The next second, Arthur carried her in his arms and walked quickly toward the off-road vehicle. When Emily looked back from the rearview mirror, her fingernails were about to pierce the car's leather seat. What on earth had Sophia done to make Arthur hold her in his arms? Once the door opened, Arthur said to Emily, "Take the passenger seat." "Why?" "She's sick." "We're going to the hospital," he answered in a low voice. She gritted her teeth with hatred in her heart. What did she have to do with Sophia's being ill? Why should she switch seats with Sophia? Since Arthur's words sounded like a command, Emily reluctantly moved to the passenger seat. Once she turned her head around, she could see Arthur holding Sophia like she was someone precious to him. After looking for a nearby hospital, the bodyguard drove there immediately. In the emergency room of the hospital, Arthur carried Sophia, who was suffering from a high fever. It was so bad that her body temperature soared to 104 degrees. The doctor immediately took emergency measures to reduce her fever. On the hospital bed, Sophia was attached to a drip, which made her delicate skin even hotter and drier to touch. While Emily waited in the car, she started to become annoyed. She wished that she would suffer from a sudden illness so that Arthur would feel bad and take care of her too. At that moment, the bodyguard returned to the car and said to her, "Young Master Weiss wants me to take you home first." "What? Is he going to stay and take care of her? Why should I let Artie take care of that brat?" Emily cursed in anger. Naturally, the man did not dare to speak, so he started the car and drove away from the hospital. In the ward, Sophia, who was receiving a drip to reduce her fever, looked extremely fragile. Her black hair was spread out on the pillow and her skin paled red from the fever, but she was now fast asleep. Arthur sat on the chair by the edge of the bed and rested his chin on his folded hands. His gaze landed on the sleeping Sophia, but no one knew what was going on in his mind. Under the incandescent lamp, it seemed as if his usual aloofness was covered with a layer of warmth and tenderness. He had never shown this side of him to any outsider except for his family. If Sophia woke up, she would see the difference in his temperament. However, she was too exhausted and the ingredients in the 4-drip were also making her drowsy. At this moment, his phone rang, which startled him, but he quickly picked up the phone and muted it. When he glanced at the caller ID, he walked out to the corridor and answered the phone. "Grandma. I missed you so much, so I decided to bring your grandpa's ashes back in advance. My flight will arrive tomorrow afternoon." "What? Tomorrow afternoon? Why? Why do you sound so surprised?" "Don't you miss me?" the old lady asked with a smile. "Of course I missed you too. See you at the airport tomorrow afternoon then. Come and take your grandpa back home." "Sure." After hanging up the phone, Arthur raised his brows slightly as if he suddenly recalled something embarrassing. Sophia slept until the early morning and her fever had subsided. Apart from the drowsiness that came as a result of the high fever, she felt a little better. The nurse who came to change her drip greeted her with a smile. "You're awake, Mississippi. Your boyfriend has just left, but he will be back soon." After speaking, she couldn't help looking at Sophia with envy. "Your boyfriend is really handsome." Sophia knew who the nurse was talking about, so she explained, "He's not my boyfriend." "Oh? Does he have a girlfriend?" The nurse blurted out with extreme curiosity before realizing that it was an inappropriate question and quickly apologized. "I'm sorry for mistaking him as your boyfriend." In fact, the nurse also thought that the lady resting on the hospital bed with fair skin and delicate facial features was a rare beauty. Sophia sat up and asked the nurse, "Did he stay the night?" The nurse was the one who worked the night shift, so of course, she knew who was with her in the ward last night. "Yes. That's why I thought he was your boyfriend," replied the nurse with a smile. Sophia looked at the chair by the edge of the bed, and there was a hint of distress in her eyes. How could she make him stay up all night to take care of her? At this moment, footsteps could be heard from outside the door, and Arthur came in with boxes of food in his hands. It was breakfast, specially delivered by his bodyguard from a luxurious restaurant. "You're awake. Have something to eat." After Arthur finished speaking, he opened a box of food and handed her a fork. "Thank you, young Master Weiss," Sophia thanked him from the bottom of her heart. Arthur's hand fell on her forehead. As if he had done this action too many times last night, it seemed natural. Once his warm and big hand was placed on her forehead, Sophia felt warmth reaching the bottom of her heart. Blinking her long lashes and having her head lowered bashfully, she waited for him to check her body temperature. It seemed that overnight, her relationship with this man had broken through another dimension. "Once you're done with breakfast, I'll send my bodyguard to take you home to rest," Arthur uttered while taking a seat. His deep and clear eyes were now bloodshot, and he looked kind of fatigued, which was visible to the naked eye. why don't you tell your bodyguard to take you home instead? I will call my dad's driver to come and pick me up, Sophia suggested, feeling bad for him. Arthur nodded and responded, sure. After she made the call, the driver said that he would come half an hour later, but Arthur did not leave immediately. Sophia took a bite of the pancake, which was fluffy and melted instantly in her mouth. It also had a smooth buttery scent. After taking the first bite, she immediately turned to look at Arthur, inquiring, you haven't eaten, have you? I'm not hungry, Arthur replied. Hearing that, Sophia hurriedly ate her portion of the pancake and forked another piece, shoving it at Arthur. It's delicious. Try it. Arthur was slightly stunned. After that, he leaned over and opened his mouth to eat the pancake she offered. Is it good? Sophia asked expectantly, as if eager to get his feedback. Yeah. Arthur nodded. Sophia grinned at his response. After sharing the food, they finished the pancake in no time. There were 2 more boxes of breakfast, but Sophia was too full to eat them. Since her fever had just subsided, she didn't have much appetite. Arthur then said to her, you don't have to stay by my side during this time. I'll call you if I need you. Hearing that, Sophia guessed, are you leaving? No. My grandma came back with my grandpa's urn, so I'm going with her to bury my grandpa's ashes, Arthur answered truthfully. Although Sophia was a little clumsy sometimes, she could still make sense of some matters. Nodding sensibly, she replied, sure. You should get that done first. When her driver was about to arrive, Arthur left, leaving Sophia lying in bed. Suddenly, she fell deep into thought while looking pure and beautiful. In Arthur's mansion, Emily stayed up late last night waiting for him to come home, but she couldn't hold her sleepiness, so she fell asleep. It was not until the morning that he returned. Artie, why did you only come back now? Is Sophia Goodwin worth your night spent in the hospital? Emily failed to hide her jealousy in her tone. Emily, my grandma will be here this afternoon. Don't mention Sophia in front of her. Arthur told her with a serious expression. Emily was startled upon hearing that, because she had already told Martha. She secretly reported it to Martha last time. I'm sorry. I accidentally mentioned Sophia's name on a call with your grandma last time. Arthur's handsome face suddenly turned gloomy as he questioned, what did you tell her? Nothing. I only said that you hired a young maid, Emily explained in a soft voice, not daring to infuriate Arthur. However, Emily had bad-mouthed Sophia in front of Martha, saying that Sophia was a vixen who wouldn't leave Arthur alone and seduced him, which instantly made Martha furious. This time, she returned to the country precisely because she heard from Emily that there was a girl who was deceiving her grandson, and she wanted to come back and set things straight. When Arthur's eyes swept across Emily's guilty expression, he could already guess what she had said to Martha. At 5:00 p.m. in the international airport, a large private jet arrived before a luxuriously dressed old lady holding a box wrapped in black silk cloth in her hand appeared from the VIP entrance, her movements gentle and careful. Behind her, there was a line of 4 maids and 8 bodyguards following her. Arthur, who had been waiting at the entrance, immediately stepped up to greet her. Grandma. Martha looked at her grandson with sharp and piercing eyes. Arctic, why do you look so unenergetic? Didn't you sleep well last night? I missed you so much that I couldn't sleep well, he explained with a smile. I don't believe you at all. Martha and her son had both married and had children at a young age. Therefore, although she was only 68 years old this year, her grandson was already grown up. It really hurts. Arthur curled his lips and smiled while stretching out his hand to carefully take the urn from Martha's hand. Let me take Grandpa back. Arthur accompanied Martha back to the villa. Along the way, she observed how much the country had developed. Although she was born abroad and lived outside of the country as well, she still wanted her hometown to prosper. How homely. She sighed. Grandma, if you like it here, we can set up a house here. What do you think? Arthur suggested. Martha looked at her grandson in surprise. As she had watched him grow up since he was a child, she knew his personality and preferences well. When Arthur met her gaze, there was a flash of discomfort in his eyes. Are you hiding something from me? She immediately asked. No. Out with it. Tell me about Miss Sophia. I want to know what kind of girl can affect my grandson as well. Martha refused to let him avoid the topic. Arthur chuckled. She's just an ordinary girl. There's nothing special. Looking at her grandson's reaction, she felt that this girl named Sophia was not just anyone and became even more interested in the reason why this girl was able to make her grandson defend her like this. Grandma, I'll ask the realtors to come over and talk to you tomorrow. Arthur changed the subject. Martha didn't continue to probe either. After all, she would be here for some time, and she would eventually get the chance to meet that girl. Meanwhile, Drake had already returned to Goodwin residence to recuperate his health. Sophia saw that all of the staff in the house had been dismissed, and her mother had started to take charge of the cooking. However, because it had been quite a while since Emma last cooked, her skills had become rusty, and she accidentally cut her finger while cutting vegetables for dinner. At the table, Drake blamed himself. It's all my fault. If I didn't get set up by that beastard, we can at least hire a maid. Sophia felt her heart ache for Emma as well, and she offered, I'll cook from now on. Emma smiled. It's fine. I don't think you even know how to hold a knife. Seeing that her family was starting to live frugally, Sophia couldn't afford to sit around anymore. It just so happened that Arthur gave her a vacation, so she could take the opportunity to find a job. In the evening, she started to write a resume and sent it to many large companies online, hoping that she could get a job as soon as possible. At night, in Martha's room at Arthur's villa, Emily reported to her what had happened in the past few days, making Sophia seem like a seductress. Grandma, she took Artie to fool around in a hotel last night, and even had her pajamas wet. After that, when I tagged along with the bodyguard to send them a new set, I saw that the two of them were only wearing bathrobes in the room. Martha frowned. When did her grandson start liking to fool around with girls in hotels? He was simply ruining their family's name. It seems that I have to meet Miss Sophia when I have the time. Grandma, when you meet her, you have to warn her to stay away from Artie, Emily reminded. Martha nodded before saying, then, you have to work hard too. Don't waste the opportunity that I created for you and Artie. Emily pursed her lips and said in a slightly aggrieved tone, I will. Early in the morning, Sophia answered a call in a daze. Hello? Who is it? Hello, are you Miss Sophia? I'm from the HR department at Bourgeois Jewelry Atelier. We have arranged for you to interview for the front desk job at 10 o'clock in the morning. Do you have time to come over? When Sophia heard this, she hurriedly replied in an excited tone, yes, I'll definitely be there. She was ecstatic as she didn't expect to receive a response when she had just submitted her resume the previous night. Besides, Bourgeois Jewelry Atelier was a high-end jewelry brand, so it was promising for her career. After hurriedly getting out of bed, she washed up and put on makeup before leaving. When the time for her appointment came, Sophia's attractive appearance and elegant aura that she had gained from her dance practice since she was a child were in line with the requirements to be a receptionist. Sophia, you can start work tomorrow. The manager of the HR department instantly hired her. She felt incredibly lucky. The salary and benefits of the company were not bad as well and completely met her expectations. When Sophia arrived for her first day at work on Tuesday, she saw that amongst the 6 receptionists, she was placed on the far left. Although they were working at the front desk, they still had complicated feelings toward each other, especially toward other girls who were prettier than them. Sophia was dressed in a professional suit with her long hair tied back, and her slim figure gave off a refreshing and stunning aura. "Hello, everyone, I'm Sophia, and I just started working here. I'll be in your care." She greeted them was a little surprised. It was her first time entering the workforce, and she had already encountered a crisis. She sat in her position, and there was only a transition plan from the previous staff. As for instructions on how to work, they did not specify in detail. "Excuse me," she tried to ask her colleague next to her. "Don't ask me. I won't teach you," the girl replied arrogantly. At her answer, Sophia didn't dare to ask any more questions. Just then, the phone in front of her rang, and she reached out to pick it up. "Hello. How may I help you?" "Transfer my call to the general manager of the planning department." A male voice instructed her from the other end of the call. "Huh? Wait a moment, let me check." Sophia quickly flipped through the transition plan, but she still couldn't find an answer after a long time. The person on the call said angrily, "What's wrong with you?" After speaking, he instantly hung up. Sophia's forehead beaded with sweat from her nervousness. As she wiped her sweat in frustration, the girl next to her sneered, "How could you come to work without any experience? This is indeed my first job. I think you should quit. You can't handle it." Her female colleague didn't want to help her, and she didn't want her to remain as a receptionist either. Still, Sophia didn't give up and replied, "I will try my best. I need this job." She was just looking at documents when she saw that her colleagues who had been lazing around suddenly straightened their backs and acted as though they were working hard. She was taken aback by the sight, and as she looked in the direction of the entrance, she saw a slender and charming figure walking in gracefully. The woman was Anastasia Tillman, the current president of Bourgeois Jewelry Atelier. She had wavy long hair and delicate features, and she wore a luxurious white custom-made suit that complemented her gorgeous waistline as she walked past the front desk while talking on the phone. "Good morning, President Tillman." The receptionists immediately got up and bowed in greeting. Sophia paused in surprise, and after everyone else had finished speaking, her voice sounded belatedly. "Good morning, President Tillman." Sophia's voice stood out from the rest. Anastasia was about to pass by the lobby when she suddenly heard this voice, and she couldn't help but turn her head and glance at the girl who had greeted her. As their eyes met, one of them was smiling while the other was full of pleasant surprise. "Miss Goodwin." Anastasia looked surprised to see Sophia at the front desk. The other receptionists next to her instantly stared at Sophia. "Why is President Tillman addressing her like they're acquainted? Do they know each other?" Anastasia walked up to Sophia with a friendly expression and asked curiously, "When did you start working at my company?" "It's my first day here," Sophia replied. Anastasia pondered slightly before offering, "I am short of an assistant. Would you like to be my assistant?" "But I'm not experienced in this area," Sophia refused. She couldn't casually accept the job either. "That's fine. You can learn if you don't know." Saying that, Anastasia said to Grace, who was behind her, "Go to the HR department and handle the necessary procedures for her." Then, she turned to Sophia and said, "Come on, follow me to my office." Just like that, Sophia walked to the elevator with Anastasia under the envious gazes of all the receptionists. She was filled with gratitude toward Anastasia for taking care of her, and Anastasia was also glad to have her as her assistant. Once they were inside the elevator, Anastasia asked Sophia concernedly, "Why aren't you with Mr. Weiss?" Previously, when Arthur brought Sophia along to her wedding, Anastasia noticed his caring attitude toward her, so she thought that he liked Sophia. And when her husband was in danger last time, Arthur and Richard had rushed over from great distances to save him, so she naturally had to be kind to Sophia. Sophia explained embarrassedly, "President Tillman, you must have misunderstood. We're just friends." Anastasia pursed her lips into a smile. From the way Sophia carried herself, she didn't look like she was from an ordinary family. "So," she asked, "are you having some sort of family trouble?" "No, I just wanted a stable job." Sophia was unable to look straight at the dazzling Anastasia. "All right, then you can rest easy and work with me. If there's anything you don't know, I'll ask someone to teach you." As they exited the elevator, Anastasia instructed while pointing at the lounge nearby, "Go and rest over there for now." Sophia felt extremely lucky to receive this treatment on her first day at work. Grace promoted her position to the president's assistant, making them colleagues. "Grace, you have to teach her everything she needs to know about work." "She's a friend of my husband's friend," Anastasia said to Grace. "Yes, President Tillman, I will." Grace nodded. Soon, Sophia owned her own office, which was spacious and bright, and she could enjoy the excellent view from the floor-to-ceiling windows. As they were located in a landmark building in the city center, the landscape was stunning all around. Anastasia had just taken a seat when her phone rang with a call from Elliot, which she answered. "Hello? The housekeeper just called and told me that Grandma suddenly collapsed. I'm rushing over from the financial summit to the hospital." Elliot's voice sounded anxious. Anastasia was taken aback as well, and she hurriedly replied, "I'll head over too." She grabbed her bag and went out, but after a moment of thought, she said to Sophia, "Sophia, come out with me. Grace, stay here and call me if anything happens." Sophia immediately got up and followed her out, and when the two walked past the front desk and headed out of the lobby, Adriana had already parked the car outside and was waiting for them. Then, the three immediately rushed toward Presgrave Hospital. Harriet, who had just been sent over, was in the emergency rescue room, while the housekeeper, Jody, the hospital director, and Brenda and her husband were all outside. "Why did my grandmother collapse?" Elliot asked Jody. Jody replied with reddened eyes, "There's no reason. She just said in the morning that she wanted to trim the flowers herself, so I brought her to the living room, but she collapsed soon after." Brenda was already in her 50s, and she comforted her nephew, "Calm down, Elliot. At your grandma's age, these things are bound to happen." Elliot's chest tightened. Deep within his heart, he never thought about his grandmother's age and always hoped that she would live a long life. However, Harriet was already 83 this year. A person's life was like a candle, and there would always come the time when its flame would burn out. Sure enough, not long later, several specialist doctors came out of the emergency rescue room with heavy and serious expressions. It was clear that there was no need for Harriet to be saved this time. "How is she, Rob?" Brenda asked the frontmost doctor. "After our evaluation, we think that we should stop causing pain to old Madame Presgrave. Moreover, she has also woken up and refused our request for surgery. She wants to see you all instead." Brenda couldn't hold back her tears, and she asked in a hoarse voice, "How much time does she have left?" In addition to severe heart failure, many of her organs are not functioning well either. "She has at most 2 days left." Elliot clenched his fists. Harriet was about to leave the world, but he couldn't do anything. Brenda also turned her head sadly and buried herself in her husband's arms, and the atmosphere turned somber. In this world, the most painful thing was to say goodbye to one's loved ones forever. Just then, Anastasia stepped out from the elevator. When she saw the group of people taking up the entire hallway, even if she didn't know what was going on, the atmosphere had already made her heart beat violently, and she looked at her husband. Elliot's eyes were red, and there was a hint of tears in his eyes. At the sight, Anastasia handed her bag to Sophia before she quickly walked over and embraced him. Elliot hugged her back tightly, a choked sound coming from his throat. Anastasia's tears stained his collar as she asked softly, "What happened to Grandma?" "Grandma is passing," Elliot replied hoarsely. Hearing that, Anastasia let her tears fall silently. Just then, a nurse came out from the ward and said, "Old Madame Presgrave wants to see Mrs. Presgrave." Anastasia hurriedly answered, "I'm here." Elliot nodded at her, and Brenda gave her a pat. "Go on." When Anastasia walked into the ward, she saw Harriet hooked up to a ventilator, and her white hair made her seem much weaker than before. However, her eyes were still clear. "Come over, my child." Harriet extended her hand toward Anastasia. Forcing her tears back, Anastasia sat by the bed, and Harriet took her hand in hers. "You're the child I worry about the most. Grandma, you'll get better." Anastasia held her sadness in and comforted her. "I know my time is up. Don't be sad now. I have no regrets." Harriet was open-minded. When the doctor wanted to extend her life earlier, she immediately refused. She just wanted to leave the world neatly instead of paying to go through the pain of surgery and then leaving. "Grandma, do you have anything to say to me?" Anastasia held her hand. "After I leave, all of our family matters will be up to you." Harriet looked at her with a regretful expression. "When I asked you to marry into our family, I wanted to give you a good life. Grandma, I love Elliot. As long as I can be with him, I can do anything." Anastasia reassured her, not wanting her to blame herself. "When I'm not around anymore, Elliot will only have you and his aunt left." As she spoke, her eyes filled with tears. At the sight, Anastasia was unable to hold her tears back as well. While wiping her tears away, she comforted, "Don't worry. Grandma, I'll always stay by his side, and I'll never let him be alone." As she spoke, Anastasia continued to cry even more as she felt a pang of pain for Elliot. Once Harriet was gone, he would be the saddest person as his parents died early when he was a child, and he was brought up by his grandmother. She couldn't even begin to comprehend how much pain he was in at the moment. "I'm leaving our family matters to you. You have to be strong. Don't let anyone bully you," Harriet instructed. Anastasia pursed her lips and nodded. "All right, I will." Harriet's breathing turned heavy, as if speaking was an extremely difficult task for her. Anastasia hurriedly advised her to rest, but Harriet said to her, "Call Elliot to come in too."
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.